So let me start with you, Sam. You've lived a life with the royal family, you've had everything handed to you, but you say your life has been hard, and now you've written all about it in your new book, Win. Yes, that's right, friend. You see, my wife and I are totally like, you should write a book because your family like stupid, and then so are like journalists. So you hate journalists. That's right. And now you wrote a book that reports on the lives of the royal family. Right. So you're a journalist. We just want to be normal people. All this attention is so hard.
There's a lot to work through there. You know, I feel really let down.
Hard. Isn't it true, sir, that your questionable wife has her own TV show and hangs out with celebrities and does fashion magazines? What are you suggesting? Well, I just think some people might say that your Instagram-loving wife actually doesn't want her privacy. How dare you, sir? My Instagram-loving wife has always wanted her privacy. And you know what else? To hell with Canada. We are leaving. We'll go find some quiet place where we can be normal people. Come on, wife. We want privacy! We want privacy! We want privacy!
Meghan Markle believed this was her moment to shift the narrative. Sitting across from Jamie Kern Lima, the founder of a billion-dollar beauty brand turned motivational powerhouse, she opened up, calmly, carefully, and in control. She spoke about kindness, about pressure, about what it means to be misunderstood in the spotlight. But what she didn't see coming was the firestorm that would ignite just days later. Because while Meghan was sharing her heart, the internet was sharpening its knife.
Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, in her first ever podcast interview.
I just threw up a little in my mouth.
Why is she showing up on hour-and-a-half-long podcasts? Who's got time for that?
His heart is even more beautiful. I mean,
oh, but his heart is even more beautiful. This is so forced.
And being a mom and a wife and a friend.
Oh, yeah.
Those are all jobs. I mean, I love being that busy, but I do think it's really interesting when people have no sense of what goes into the thing.
Yeah.
And then came the South Park-style backlash, savage, roasting, and viral. A cartoon roast inspired by what many viewers called the fakest podcast moment of the year.
But she is a malignant who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim.
Are you in love now more than ever?
Are you in love? How happy and beautiful is your husband? He's so beautiful.
Suddenly, what was meant to be a healing, empowering interview became a meme, a punchline, and allegedly a personal breaking point. Now there are whispers that Meghan demanded the satirical clips be taken down, that she was caught off guard, again, by how fast the internet can flip the script.
Look at this town. There's just something about it. Oh, darling, I think this might be the place. You really think so? It's so quiet and empty here. If we moved here, then people would think we're really serious about wanting to be normal. It does seem perfect, doesn't it? We can have a fresh start here. Lead a normal life and have babies. Can we? Can we really move here and finally have our own privacy? My love, I will do anything for your privacy.
But what exactly happened in that now infamous podcast? Why did the smallest details set off a scandal? And what's the real story behind the cartoon joke? It all starts with one interview and one tiny mistake. When Meghan Markle appeared on the Jamie Kern Lima show on April 28th, it seemed like a safe space. Jamie, who built It Cosmetics from nothing and became a self-made success story, is known for heartfelt conversations that lean into vulnerability. Meghan was framed not as a royal, but as a woman reflecting on her past and redefining her future.
Hearing Meghan talk about Harry and how much of a fox he is.
He's also a fox. If you haven't noticed, my husband's very, very handsome.
I mean, have you ever heard somebody have to try so hard to be like, put it out there? I'm not buying it.
There's nothing I like about her. Well, she never stops whining. My castle's too small. Yeah. The queen was mean to me. They won't let me call myself Her Royal Highness anymore, but I'm gonna put it all over my stationery and on the gifts that I give to my friends.
This was her stage to reclaim the narrative, and at first it worked. The conversation was intimate. Meghan spoke about her fear of failure, her journey through rejection. She described how being misunderstood had taken a toll on her mental health. She even shared how she once comforted Jamie during a stressful moment, an anecdote Jamie herself described as a turning point in their friendship. It was designed to be inspiring. A story of two successful women lifting each other up. But as the podcast went live, something felt off. Despite the warm words, some viewers couldn't shake the sense that it was too polished, too perfect. Every sentence felt rehearsed. Meghan, dressed in soft neutrals and speaking in a slow, soothing voice, didn't look rattled or real. She looked branded. Critics quickly latched onto this, calling it another example of Markle's tendency to curate vulnerability. One viewer commented, "She's not being real, she's performing empathy," and that sentiment started gaining traction. It didn't help that the entire entire tone of the podcast leaned heavily into admiration, avoiding hard questions or pushback. Meghan's critics claimed it felt more like a PR campaign than a conversation. The word scripted started floating around Twitter, and the backlash wasn't just quiet. Within hours, memes and reaction videos were already dissecting her every word. The podcast had tried to position Meghan as relatable, but to some, it only amplified the distance between her public image and private reality. Still, the most damaging blow hadn't landed yet. That came from a tiny, seemingly harmless detail in the background, a card, a title, and 3 letters that reopened a royal wound. You'd have to squint to see it. In the video version of the podcast, sitting atop a gift basket Meghan had sent Jamie, there was a small, handwritten card. But it wasn't the message that caught people's attention, it was the signature. From HRH, the Duchess of Sussex. 3 letters, HRH, Her Royal Highness. To most viewers, it may have seemed like a simple formality, but to royal watchers and critics, it was a bombshell. Because in 2020, when Meghan and Harry stepped back from their senior royal roles, they agreed to stop using the HRH title. It was part of the so-called Megxit agreement. While they technically retained the titles, using them publicly or semi-publicly was seen as breaking royal protocol. So when this tiny detail appeared in a video shared with millions, people noticed fast, and they weren't happy. Social media erupted. Why is she still using HRH? Didn't the Queen forbid this? Is she trying to have it both ways? Theories spread rapidly. Some accused Meghan of clinging to royal status for clout while claiming she wanted privacy. Others said she was trying to elevate her brand by reminding people of her title. And then there were those who believed it was a deliberate power move. Subtle, but strategic. The backlash wasn't limited to Twitter. UK tabloids ran front-page headlines like Markle breaks Queen's deal and HRH-gate, Meghan's latest scandal. TV commentators debated the ethics of title usage. Even some royalists who had softened their stance on Meghan called it disrespectful. For Meghan, it was déjà vu. A moment that was meant to signal grace and gratitude had once again turned into a storm of judgment. But this time, the criticism wouldn't stop at the tabloids or YouTube commentators, because in a matter of days, a satirical cartoon, designed in the unmistakable style of South Park, would go viral. And it wouldn't just poke fun at the podcast, it would mock everything about Meghan's brand, her voice, her image, even her kindness. And what happened next would leave Meghan reportedly in tears. It didn't take long for the public response to spiral out of control. What started as a podcast episode meant to humanize Meghan Markle quickly turned into a digital avalanche of criticism, mockery, and speculation. And the spark wasn't just the HRH title, it was everything. Her voice, her expressions, even the way she nodded along during Jamie's questions. People weren't just disagreeing, they were dissecting. Twitter lit up with side-by-side screenshots, meme reactions, and parody quotes. One user wrote, "I've seen hostage videos with more sincerity," while another joked that the podcast felt like an AI simulation of empathy. The internet had found its new obsession, and it was tearing into every frame of the episode. YouTube reactors jumped in. Channels with millions of subscribers were already pushing out titles like Meghan Markle's most inauthentic interview yet, or Is She Playing the Victim Again? Within 48 hours, clips of the interview had racked up hundreds of thousands of views, most of them not from fans, but critics eager to analyze what they saw as another PR misfire. Even daytime talk shows got involved. Panelists on The View reportedly refused to even discuss the episode, hinting at fatigue over Meghan's narrative. Others openly roasted the way she presented herself, calling the podcast tone-deaf in the face of ongoing economic struggles across the US. One host bluntly asked, "How does talking about fear of failure from a $14 million mansion make her relatable to anyone?" But perhaps the most savage criticism didn't come from news outlets or influencers. It came from everyday people, moms, students, and 9-to-5 workers who felt alienated by Meghan's curated vulnerability. They weren't buying the message. They felt like it was just another example of celebrity self-branding disguised as authenticity. And in an era where the public is hypersensitive to anything that smells fake, that disconnect was dangerous. Then came the twist. As the noise grew louder, a new wave of parody videos started emerging. Videos that looked suspiciously familiar. They had the pacing, the voices, the cutthroat sarcasm of something we've all seen before. And that's when the internet asked, did South Park just roast Meghan Markle again? It wasn't an official episode, not this time, but the internet didn't care. A fan-made video, crafted in the signature style of South Park, surfaced just days after the podcast aired. The characters looked like exaggerated versions of Meghan and Jamie, their voices dripping with melodrama, their lines filled with painfully accurate satire. In the parody, Meghan whines about being misunderstood while a cartoon Jamie nods endlessly, saying things like, "You're so brave, so strong, so oppressed." The video ends with both characters crying into diamond-studded tissues, an image that became an instant meme. The satire hit harder than anyone expected. It didn't just roast the podcast, it took apart the entire Meghan Markle brand. The carefully curated vulnerability, the use of her royal title, the endless public claims of privacy followed by high-profile appearances, it was all fair game. And the worst part? The video went viral. Within 72 hours, it had millions of views on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitter. People who hadn't even seen the original podcast were now sharing the parody. For many, the cartoon became the way they interpreted the whole situation. It took over the narrative. Rumors began swirling that Meghan was furious. Insider blogs claimed she reached out to her PR team in a panic, asking what could be done to stop the spread. One source claimed she even made informal legal inquiries about getting the content removed, though nothing has been confirmed. But the damage was done. Once satire goes viral, you can't unsee it. You can't scrub it from public memory. You can't undo the joke. And here's where it gets even more savage. This wasn't the first time Meghan had been targeted by South Park. Fans quickly brought up the infamous Worldwide Privacy Tour episode, where Meghan and Harry were roasted for demanding privacy while constantly seeking the spotlight. That episode alone had already shaped how millions of viewers saw the couple, and this new parody only poured gasoline on that fire. What stung even more was the tone of the satire. It wasn't angry. It was cold, clever, and merciless. It didn't scream, it smirked. And that's the kind of criticism that sticks. And while the video may not have come from official South Park creators, it carried the same spirit. Razor sharp, irreverent, and completely unforgiving. It blurred the lines between comedy and commentary, leaving Meghan in a nearly impossible position. Respond and risk amplifying the joke, or stay silent and let it define her. But that wasn't the end of it. Because as the parody storm raged on, reports began to surface that Meghan wasn't just upset, she was crushed. And what happened next might have been her lowest moment yet. Behind closed doors, the tone reportedly shifted from frustration to something far heavier. According to several gossip outlets and royal insiders, Meghan Markle didn't just brush off the viral parody, she took it personally, very personally. Sources close to her, speaking under anonymity, described her reaction as shaken, overwhelmed, and even devastated. One insider claimed she broke down in tears after watching the video, saying she felt roasted for trying to be honest. Another source said she believed the public was intentionally twisting her words to fit a narrative that just wouldn't go away. Allegedly, she asked her PR team to do damage control, not just to push back on the memes, but to help reframe the story. There were whispers of potential requests to platform moderators to remove the most viral clips, though there's no evidence that any takedown efforts succeeded. But here's the truth. Once the internet turns you into a character, it stops listening to your side. The parody becomes more powerful than the person, and Meghan knows that better than anyone. She spent years trying to rebrand herself, from actress to duchess, from duchess to activist, from activist to entrepreneur. And each time she tries to pivot, the backlash seems to grow louder. This time was no different. What made it worse was the timing. According to a friend, Meghan had gone into this podcast episode genuinely hopeful. She believed that teaming up with Jamie Kern Lima, someone with her own underdog to mogul story, would finally allow her to be seen differently, more grounded, more sincere. But instead, it felt like everything backfired. Even Harry reportedly was furious. Tabloids claimed he told friends the video was mean-spirited and disgraceful. Others speculated he encouraged Meghan to stay strong and ignore the noise. But behind the scenes, the couple was quietly scrambling to protect their image once again. And the worst part? Meghan didn't feel roasted for saying something wrong. She felt roasted for just showing up, for trying. That's the kind of hit that doesn't just sting, it sticks. It makes you question whether being public is worth it at all. But in truth, this wasn't an isolated incident. Meghan had been here before, roasted, ridiculed, dragged across the internet for daring to speak, no matter the message. And the South Park-style takedown? That was just the latest installment in a long-running pattern. This isn't the first time Meghan Markle found herself in the crosshairs of brutal satire. In fact, this kind of criticism has followed her like a shadow ever since she stepped into the royal spotlight, and then tried to step out of it on her own terms. Back in early 2023, South Park aired a full-length episode titled The Worldwide Privacy Tour that featured thinly veiled versions of Harry and Meghan. The animated couple begged for privacy while appearing on every TV show, magazine cover, and interview platform imaginable. The satire was scathing and unforgettable. It painted them as attention-hungry and tone-deaf, obsessed with controlling their narrative while publicly claiming they wanted to be left alone. The response? Mixed, but massive. Some fans were outraged, calling the episode cruel. But many viewers, even those on the fence, said it nailed what they'd been feeling for months but didn't know how to say. The episode didn't just go viral, it reshaped public perception. Suddenly, Harry and Meghan weren't just controversial, they were laughable. And that kind of reputational damage doesn't fade easily. Since then, the couple has struggled to reset the tone. Their Netflix documentary, Harry's memoir Spare, and Meghan's earlier Archetypes podcast were all attempts to reclaim their story. And while those projects had success, they also reignited debate. Some praised their vulnerability. Others said it was just more curated content designed to keep them relevant and profitable. So when the Jamie Kern Lima Show episode dropped, it wasn't entering neutral ground. It was entering a battlefield. A battlefield where every gesture, every phrase, and every facial expression would be interpreted through a lens shaped by years of memes, roast, and media firestorms. That's why the fan-made South Park parody hit so hard. It wasn't just poking fun at one podcast, it was tapping into a larger fatigue. A growing segment of the public no longer sees Meghan as misunderstood. They see her as a master of self-victimization. Fair or not, that's the narrative that's taken hold. And here's the truth. Once satire becomes your brand's biggest competitor, you're no longer in control of the story. You're reacting to it. That's the position Meghan now finds herself in, trying to be authentic in a world that no longer gives her the benefit of the doubt, trying to tell her story while the internet insists on telling its own version. And with every new attempt to shift the narrative, it seems the pushback only gets stronger. But the question remains, can she win this battle for public perception? Or has the internet already made up its mind? At the heart of it all, Meghan Markle's story is one that keeps circling back to the same question. Is it possible to control your image in a world that thrives on tearing it down? Because whether you see her as misunderstood or manipulative, one thing is clear. The court of public opinion has no pause button. And for Meghan, every attempt to hit reset seems to trigger a new wave of backlash. The podcast with Jamie Kern Lima was supposed to be a moment of calm, a chance to pull back the curtain and show her human side. But the public didn't see authenticity. They saw strategy. They didn't hear vulnerability. They heard branding. And when satire entered the chat, it didn't just roast the episode, it weaponized it. Maybe it wasn't fair. Maybe it was inevitable. But either way, Meghan is now in a space where even silence is scrutinized. If she speaks, she's accused of playing the victim. If she stays quiet, she's called calculated. It's a no-win situation that keeps tightening the spotlight around her, until every move becomes material for a meme. Or worse, a parody that defines her in ways she never consented to. And yet, the deeper irony? In trying to rewrite her story, Meghan may have proven the very thing her critics have been saying all along, that in the age of digital satire and viral ridicule, intention doesn't matter. Perception does. So what comes next? Will she disappear from the spotlight again? Try another platform, another message, another reintroduction? Or will she fight back, not with lawsuits or PR campaigns, but with something the public hasn't seen from her yet? Something raw, something unfiltered, something real enough that even her harshest critics pause before hitting share. Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, this won't be the last time the internet decides who Meghan Markle is. And if history repeats itself, the next viral moment might already be loading.